Star Trek Generations Confusing Time Travel Explained. When Star Trek Generations premiered in 1994, it was meant to be a cinematic passing of the torch, bringing together Captain James T. Kirk of the original series and Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Next Generation for one final adventure. But instead of simply uniting the two legendary captains, the movie threw them into a strange and often confusing time travel paradox involving the Nexus, an extra-dimensional energy ribbon that allowed people to exist outside of linear time. While it was an ambitious concept, the Nexus and the way time was manipulated in the film left many fans scratching their heads for decades. So, what exactly happened in Star Trek Generations? And how does the time travel actually make sense, or not, when examined closely? Let's untangle the knots of the Nexus. The Nexus, a dreamlike loop outside of time. The core of Generations' time travel plot revolves around the Nexus, an energy wave that sweeps across the galaxy. Anyone caught inside it enters a timeless, dreamlike state where reality bends to their deepest desires. For Dr. Tullian Saran, the villain of the film, the Nexus represents eternal bliss. For Picard, it manifests as the family he never had. And for Kirk, it creates a fantasy of domestic life, something he had always sacrificed for Starfleet. The key detail here is that the Nexus doesn't just transport someone through time, it exists outside of time altogether. Inside it, there's no past, present, or future. Instead, one can choose to exit the Nexus at any point in history, effectively allowing time travel. This is how Picard convinces Kirk to leave the Nexus with him to stop Sauron's plan to destroy a star and wipe out an entire planetary system. At first glance, this seems straightforward. Enter the Nexus, go back in time, and fix the mistake. But the deeper you look, the messier it gets. The double timeline problem. Here's where the confusion begins. In the film's original timeline, Picard fails to stop Sauron. The scientist launches a missile that destroys the Viridian star, causing massive devastation. Picard is powerless, and the star system dies. He is then pulled into the Nexus, where he meets Kirk. From there, Picard persuades Kirk to leave the Nexus with him. They re-enter reality at a point before Sauron launches the missile, giving them a second chance. This results in the climactic battle, where Kirk dies, but Sauron is ultimately defeated, and the Viridian system is saved. The issue is that this effectively creates two versions of events. 1. Timeline A. Picard fails to stop Sauron. The star is destroyed, and Picard enters the Nexus. 2. Timeline B. Picard and Kirk exit the Nexus earlier in time, prevent Sauron's plan, and undo the destruction. But if the Nexus exists outside of time, shouldn't Timeline A cease to exist once Picard changes events in Timeline B? Or do both timelines continue independently, creating a branching multiverse? The movie never makes this clear, leaving fans divided on whether Generations works as a closed-loop paradox or a multiverse story. Why didn't Picard go back further? One of the biggest criticisms of Generations' time travel logic is that Picard doesn't use the Nexus to go back earlier. For example, he could have chosen to exit the Nexus before Sauron ever launched his plan, or even back on the Enterprise, giving him infinite opportunities to stop the disaster with less risk. Instead, he returns at the exact moment of his failure, leading to Kirk's heroic but preventable death. If Picard could pick any point in time, why not choose one with a higher chance of success and lower cost? The movie glosses over this problem, but many fans argue it was a narrative necessity. The filmmakers wanted Kirk to die in one final act of bravery, so Picard couldn't have solved the issue too easily. In universe, one could argue that the Nexus only let Picard return to moments of personal significance, and his confrontation with Sauron was the key inflection point. Still, it feels like a missed opportunity for logical consistency. Is the Nexus a metaphor? Some fans and scholars argue that the time travel confusion in Generations is intentional, because the Nexus isn't meant to be a hard science fiction concept, but rather a metaphor. The Nexus represents temptation, the seductive pull of living in an illusion where nothing bad can happen. By leaving it, both Picard and Kirk accept the importance of reality, no matter how painful. Seen this way, the details of the Nexus's time travel abilities aren't meant to hold up under scrutiny. The rules are vague because the story is really about Picard coming to terms with loss and Kirk finally finding a meaningful death. The time paradox, then, is just a narrative device to get the two captains working together in one timeline. The legacy of Generations' time travel. Decades later, Generations remains one of the most divisive Star Trek films. For some, the muddled time travel undermines the emotional weight of Kirk's sacrifice and Picard's victory. For others, the ambiguity enhances the mystical aura of the Nexus,